right, so Thais, good to go?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining us from different parts of the world. On behalf of CIMMYT, its partners, I warmly welcome you to this final webinar of the Accelerated Innovation Delivery Initiative, AIDI. Today, our theme is titled AIDI's Legacy. So we are going to look back, to leap forward, get as much lessons as possible, and talk about scale-up potential and future opportunities for the good work and foundation already done by AIDI. So this is not just a closing session, but a celebration of achievements and reflection on lessons and a forward-looking dialogue on how we can sustain and scale AIDI's impact. First, also let me express sincere gratitude and appreciation to the US and the American people who have funded the work that AIDI has done over the past 3 years. Also, sincere appreciations to the implementing organizations, researchers, and most importantly, the farming communities that have made this journey possible. Of course, we have a very good panel as well, and I want to thank each of them for taking their time to join us. Their experience and diverse perspectives will really enrich this discussion. So I'm going to introduce the panelists in a bit, but first off, we'll get started with a couple of logistical notes. So as usual, this is a webinar, and it only works well if when you are not requested to talk, you mute yourself and give as much concentration to the other speakers as they deliver their points. Our session today is going to be a 90-minute program. This is much longer than, of course, the webinars we've had in the past. Most of the previous ones have been about 1 hour, 60 minutes long. But because of the discussion we are having today, you would understand the need for a bit more time. So the session is going to be in 2 parts or 2 segments. First segment, we are going to talk a bit about AIDI's legacy and what worked and what can be scaled. And in the second part, we'll talk a bit more about looking beyond AIDI, the sustainability and future pathways. We will also have a session for audience engagement where, as people participating here, the audience, we'd like to hear from you any questions or clarifications or actually additional inputs that you may have to the discussion that we are going to have. The chat function is open for this, putting in Q&A, or we will also look at and monitor, see if there is a raised hand coming in. So please feel free to engage with the submission and the discussion, and we look forward to hearing feedback from you. We will wrap this up with the closing reflections from the CIMMYT leadership who are represented on this call. So at this point, without much further ado, I want to open this webinar, starting with a 5-minute impact video that is going to be played, just showcasing some of the impact AIDI has had on local farming communities in these parts of Africa and Southern Africa, so to speak. So Thais, could you kindly play for us the impact video?
In Chipata, Zambia, a new generation of young farmers is helping to redefine what it means to work the land, not as a last resort, but as a gateway to opportunity. Through CIMMYT's Southern Africa Accelerated Innovation Delivery Initiative, AIDI, Rapid Delivery Hub project, they are gaining access to improved seeds, climate-smart technologies, and hands-on training that boost productivity and strengthen livelihoods. By partnering with local organizations like Farmers, Outgrower Foundation, and championing sustainable practices, AIDI is empowering these youth to see themselves not just as farmers, but as innovators and entrepreneurs who are, in turn, shaping resilient and thriving communities.
Zina langa nne Jennifer Sanga, nichokera mu Chipangale District, Eastern Province of Zambia. Ndine mwana wa Chasaya Sanga, balidi farmer ba FOF. Bakalibe kuyamba kulima na ba FOF, benza okumana na mavuto monga kusoba mbewu, kusaba kugulisa. Sometimes sibenza otengana mapunziro okwanira kuti mbewu zawo angalime bwanji.
Through projects like AID, CIMMYT, working hand in hand with the Farmers Outgrower Foundation is empowering young people like Jennifer to build sustainable futures in agriculture. At the demonstration sites, youth are introduced to modern technologies such as drought-tolerant maize, early maturing varieties, and conservation agriculture. These plots serve as real-world classrooms where they learn, practice, and test new techniques. But empowerment goes beyond farming skills. FOF also equips youth with market linkages, helping them connect with buyers and secure fair prices for their produce. This means young farmers are not only producing food, but also earning incomes, creating jobs, and driving economic growth. In these spaces, youth gain more than technical know-how. They build the confidence to turn obstacles into opportunities and ideas into enterprise. By combining CIMMYT's innovations with FOF's training and market access, the next generation of farmers is being equipped to strengthen food systems, support community development, and shape a future full of possibilities.
So 2019, after nasiliza school, ninamba okuzilimirako naine paineneka. Nezetenga mbewu kwa mene kuli wa FOF through the help of CIMMYT. Wenzo tupasa mapunziro, anzotiendera mbewu zija mumunda after tashanga. Ngati sinasengulire bwino sinalimiremo bwino wenzo tuuza ati apafani kuseulira so. Ngati mwabwera mbewu zinangu zesi zili monga zija zetalima wenzo tuuza titinyule. 2023 naenda ku school endo studying early childhood education using ndrama zochokera mu FOF. Ezeta nikalima mbewu zija nikagulisa ntenga ndrama nendolipira ku school. So apape nikamba nili mu 3rd year.
For many, this work goes far beyond producing food. It's about building businesses, securing incomes, and stepping into leadership within resilient, market-linked agri-food systems. Guided by this vision, AID places people at the center of every solution, enabling young Zambians to transform agriculture with innovation as their tool and purpose as their driver.
We are the future. And the future starts in the soil.
Right, thank you very much, Thais and the CIMMYT team for that inspiring video. We use that to just showcase as one of the snippets for actually what AID has achieved on the ground, impacting real lives for real people. And it's not just imaginary numbers. So stories like Jennifer's abound across DRC, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, where the AID Southern Africa project has actually been implementing quite a bit of activities. So as I mentioned earlier at the start, this webinar is going to be in 2 parts, with the first segment focused about what worked and what can be scaled from the AID work. So at this point, I would like to introduce the first 4 of our panelists, starting with Professor Siglinda Snap. Sig Snap is the director of CIMMYT Sustainable Agri-Foods Program and the professor of soils and cropping systems ecology at Michigan State University. She pioneered participatory mother and baby trial designs. So we sort of call her jokingly the mother of mother and baby trial, widely adopted across 30 countries. And as the SAS program director, SIG oversees strategic implementation and alignment of science partnerships and impact pathways for ADI and other CIMMYT projects under the SAS portfolio. Up next, our panelist is Margaret Mukwena Sadrick. And Margaret is the country manager of EFAP, Malawi. Margaret brings about over 15 years of experience in program development and management, and her expertise spans business development, youth empowerment, and community transformation across Malawi and Zimbabwe. She's led multiple initiatives that improve access to inputs and markets for smallholder farmers. Our third panelist is Coletta Njuguru, who is the country program manager for the World Veg, Tanzania. And Coletta has extensive experience in governance, finance, and development partnership. She previously served as the chief of staff at the Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank, strengthening national agricultural finance and policy linkages. Coletta also serves on the advisory board of the UN Capital Development Fund Local Finance Initiative. And last, but not in any way least, is Dr. Rob Bartram. Dr. Rob Bartram recently served as the chief scientist of the USAID Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, where he led evidence-based agricultural research for Feed the Future. Rob oversaw USAID's collaborations with CGIAR, the Innovation Labs, global crop research initiatives, ensuring that research translated into impact and development. Rob's leadership extends to multilateral science platforms, including Global Crop Diversity Trust and FAO's Fall Armyworm Global Action Committee. Colleagues, welcome to this discussion. It's a very big pleasure to have you. When we sent the invitation, we had the utmost confidence that you are the right people to give us perspectives on this discussion. So as you can tell our audience, this panel provides an array of views, and we're looking forward to hear from them. So at this point, I'm going to start with the first question to Dr. Rob Bartram. And Rob, welcome once again. So Rob, from your wealth of experience having led USAID's agricultural research portfolio, working across the CGIAR, Innovation Labs, and the public-private partnerships, you have a very unique vantage point. So what lessons from ADA's research development integration should shape future investment in scaling these agricultural innovations? Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Jonathan, and greetings, everybody. It's wonderful to be together at this moment of stock taking, and also thank you for pitching it towards the future. So in this question, I had sort of, my thoughts went two directions. One was the foundational aspect of ADI integrating complementary technologies. We just saw that in the video, for example, right? The different crops, the soil, the market linkages, all those things came together. So there's this package of innovations that generate synergies that are proven, but also to some degree flexible, so that farmers or communities can adapt as they need to. Another aspect of this, from the technical standpoint, which was critical to the success, was that this program was demand-driven. It was not, we're here and here's what you should do. It was, we're here, we have these tools and approaches which work for you. So it was an interaction between last mile partners and research partners like CIP and CIAT and CIMMYT and CIAT, CIP, World Veg, all the different partners, IFDC, and so you could come together. And then the fourth thing about the technical dimension was we wanted it to be market led. I know everybody on the panel remembers at the beginning where we said this is not once and done. We want these things to last. So that was a sustainability component. Now, on the contextual piece that I want to flag is that we had operational flexibility and we had a sense of urgency. AIDI was established in response to the food and fertilizer price crisis. So that helped us remain focused. The fact that we were in an urgent situation. We also had that flexibility to have low administrative overhead partnerships. I hope that's what people concluded because that was what was needed. We had to move quickly, so elaboration was limited. We had to work with the seasons, the calendar of the seasons. So can we replicate that sense of urgency in other contexts? And I would argue that we need to. You know, we were talking about responding to the global food and fertilizer price crisis, but it was really about people and helping people not be hungry, to be better off, to enable them to, for example, be much less affected by the El Nino drought. So there's an urgency there that I think we need to hold on to. And then finally, documentation is critical for this work that in making the case going forward. We need to really document it, and we have to capture in that how seriously the partners took the effort. So I hope that can emerge, you know, to hear from those last mile partners in our takeaways, how their views, how they saw it, and added to that sense of timeliness and urgency. And the last point I'd make, and I know the next panel will talk about it, is that the model is adaptable to different contexts, to different situations. But I'll leave that for others to talk about. Thank you. That was question 4, I guess. Yes. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Question 1.
Thank you. Always succinct as usual. So thanks for that. And maybe just to pick a strand from what you've said, we have some of the partners who actually implemented ADI on the ground. And of course, the message was always agency and make sure you do work that actually has lasting impact on the lives of the smallholder farmers. So I'm gonna bring in one of our panelists who implemented activities on the ground actually as well, Margaret Mokoena from AFAP. So Margaret, picking up from where Rob has left it and looking back, what do you see as ADI's most enduring legacy for farmers and partners, considering your implementation experience? And how did ADI help AFAP, which was already doing some great work on the ground, to strengthen the hub agro-dealer model in Malawi?
All right, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I don't need to introduce my name, it's right there, but maybe I can explain what AFAP is in seconds. So AFAP is African Fertilizer and Agribusiness Partnership. So fertilizer, meaning anything to do with soil health, productivity, is anchored in our work. In partnerships, because you can't do anything without partnerships. And agribusiness, because this is the business we are all in, of food systems. So AFAP was privileged to be one of the delivery, particularly last mile delivery partners under ADI. And we were, like Rob said, one of the legacy that we've actually not maybe looked at is the rapid delivery. We were contracting in November. By December, farmers knew what we were doing. So I think before we even get into what I think, is the the of legacy, the legacy that we were able to get in there hit the ground running is such a big testament to the successes that ADI had. So AFAP was looking primarily at three areas: strengthening seed systems through promoting adoption of stress-tolerant varieties. We were looking at improving fertilizer use efficiency, because we all know that even if you put fertilizer to soil that is finished, it's not going to lead to any results. And then finally, we were also looking at access to sustainable agriculture advisory services, because we all know for people to even know what a mother or baby demo is, someone needs to take that message to farmers. So that was the homework AFAP had over the past 2 years to ensure that this reaches farmers very rapidly. So I'll briefly now go into what I feel, and my colleagues are from AFAP are also on the call. They can be adding things on the chat if they feel I've left out some things. So briefly, I feel that the biggest legacy was enhancing last mile delivery. Because at AFAP, leveraging our private sector engagement, we needed to, thanks, Jerry, we needed to make sure that we do the last mile. It's well and good to talk about new technologies, new seed varieties, but if they're not reaching the farmer in the last distance possible, without them having to struggle or go through, literally move heaven and earth to access those inputs, then we're not doing anything. We're not doing justice to our programs. So AFAP was to 238,000 farmers pretty much in the first year. And we're doing this because of the P in our name, which is partnership. We work with hub agro dealers, who are the last mile private sector entities that stock agriculture inputs and ensure that farmers access those inputs where they are within their communities. We leveraged existing village savings and loans associations, which are mostly constituted of women. So we're essentially killing two birds with one stone. One, last mile delivery. Two, a gendered approach. So by using VSLAs, grouping women into groups, then taking those groups that are primarily for village savings, but also to concepts such as this is a demonstration plot, come as a group and learn from it. We were then able to do quite a lot. I think the young lady who spoke in the video already preempted what I was going to say. What we also managed as legacy is increasing farm incomes by improving access to markets and then also bulk input purchasing. So because we were working with farmers within their village savings, they were able to not wait for a big donor with a bag of money. They were actually able to save what they could at their level and then purchase seeds, the seeds that we were promoting. So in doing so, we were able to improve that input supply and ensure that, with decency and integrity, people can actually access the inputs without having to dance for anyone. They're accessing inputs and at the right time and also the right inputs. So on the market side, because if there's no market for a specific variety of crop, believe you me, farmers will not adopt. So I said this when we were starting in Lilongwe, when we were launching this project, to say we are going to start with the market at first. So we had our off-takers come in right at the beginning of the project, then contract farmers to say we are interested in pigeon peas, we're interested in cowpeas. And then we are also talking to the input suppliers and telling them this is what the market demands. It's not just beans, it's this specific type of beans. It's newer beans, it's this type of cowpeas, it's this type of soybean. So in doing so, we then had the farmers already geared towards commercialization. So commercialization is not this one big animal where farmers, it can start from any point. That's essentially what we're able to do with ADI. So because we're starting with the market in mind, we had the market players, the off-takers coming in right at the beginning. We were able to do contracting. 84 tons of seed was bought through this kind of arrangement. 113 tons of fertilizer was moved, and this all led to 126,000 tons plus of produce offtake from the ADI project. So these are real figures, real money that's getting into farmers' pockets. So we are not just talking of, when we talk of climate change, when we talk of stress-adapted crops, is to actually feed an end. It's for hunger, but it's also for farmer incomes. We've already said that we're promoting adoption of stress tolerant. Some of the biggest successes was when we were introducing some crops that had been previously neglected, and then farmers were now getting excited about these crops because they did not know the stress tolerant varieties or the stress tolerant qualities of these crops. So we had, for instance, in Dedza, where farmers are typically vegetables, potatoes, and then we were trying to introduce pigeon peas, and the farmers were like, yeah, we're not a pigeon pea area. But through ADI, we were able to sell the benefits of this, to say if you grow pigeon peas, we are also covered in terms of XYZ. And not even talking about the money value of pigeon peas in Malawi. So we're working across 15 different varieties of legumes and maize. And then because we were integrating village savings and loan associations, I will always talk about farmer incomes. It's good when farmers come together, save towards agriculture inputs. So this is something that we were also able to do. So for example, we had two farmer groups comprising of about, give or take 20 farmers each. They managed to save $2,000 worth of kwacha, of course, to purchase agriculture inputs. So by the time, and there was a seed shortage last year, but these guys didn't know what that meant because they'd saved, and we introduced them to the seed companies that produce the specific varieties, and voila, by October, mid-October, they were done buying what they needed. So this is part of the rapid delivery that we were able to do. I think I'm still okay on time, just a minute or so for me to explain about the hub agro-dealer model. We did not, at AFAP, we're very small. I think the whole office, we've got like 9 staff, but how were we able to reach 238,000 farmers within almost the first year? I think the first year we reached 117,000, and then the previous year we then added, some. So AFAP leveraged what we call our hub agro-dealer model. So like I said, we work to catalyze private sector investment into the agriculture sector. But this private sector looks so different across the different African countries. And for Malawi and other countries where AFAP works, we primarily work with agro-dealers. So agro-dealers stock agriculture equipment. Agro-dealers have a phone call away from seed suppliers, from irrigation suppliers, and so forth. So to each agro-dealer that we work with, of which under ADI, we're working with 40. So for each agro-dealer that we work with, we put a field officer, an extension agent, to ensure that there is the transfer of knowledge, because it's not just selling. Yeah? For the hub agro-dealer, what matters is profitability. But what we were reminding this agro-dealer is profitability comes from farmers knowing what's good for them. So we attached extension agents, 40 extension agents, and each extension agent would then recruit an army of community agribusiness advisors who are on the ground, the ones that would take care of the demonstrations, the one that will recruit people and to let's grow pigeon peas, let's grow this variety. So we had sort of a pluralistic extension model to reach our farmers at scale with the right technologies at the right time. We had soil health clinics, and these are like almost 500, where farmers learning right at the center in the communities to say, how do we improve our soils using what we already have? Okay, we are growing legumes. How can we rotate? What can we do to improve so that we can have better results from our fertilizer? We also ensured that our hub agro dealers were trained. We built farmers is not adulterated. They understand that if you give farmers an adulterated seed or adulterated fertilizer, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot. So I think in a nutshell, this is how we as AFAP were able to reach farmers at scale, but also in a meaningful way. What this has done for AFAP is we are now trying to replicate this model. This is now ask that, Jonathan. We're trying to replicate what we did with ADI across our other AFAP countries, because there was a lot of impact and lessons to be learned. Because what we want to see is, at the end of the day, farmers' needs are met. At the same time, the private sector, which is the engine that drives growth, is also covered. So I think I'll end it there. If questions, I can respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. sharing that very insightful implementation experience from Malawi. So I'm going to pick a bit of what you mentioned, and I think you could have gone into more details about it, but let me now pick that and extend it to your neighbors across in Tanzania. The topic of gender and youth inclusion, and Coletta, you are my target at this point. So how did gender and youth inclusion shape the outcomes for ADA implementation? And how did World Vegetable Center focus on the entire vegetable and spice value chain, help create jobs for the youth collector in Tanzania?
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan and the CIMMYT team for ensuring this AIDI project comes through, and especially in Tanzania. I'd like to set you the Tanzania context to begin with. We're talking about a population of 61.7 million people in 2022, that's official census, sorry. And now it's looking like 71 million population. Out of that population, you're talking about a 34.5 percentile people who are between the ages of 15 to 35, which constitutes as youth. And then you're also talking about 51% of the population being women. So you cannot talk about AIDI intervention in Tanzania without this specific groups of people. How we were able to succeed was, of course, financially we're able to succeed given the CIMMYT intervention, but also we said out of the 32,000 beneficiaries of the program, we ensured that at least 58% were women and 58% were youth and 42% were women, positioning this as lead actors in the vegetable, spice, and herb business production. We also learned that women became trusted suppliers of seedlings because the youth come in with a lot of innovation and vibrancy and energy and speed. But their patience levels are not the best. We've all been young people, so you can imagine. So they come in at the innovation stage in terms of a quick turnaround on the seedlings that can easily be offloaded into the market. The women, on the other hand, are now developing assets so that they can have access to financing, etc. So, and they're ready to go into the farms and actually do the harder work, I would say, but this is relative. And so the women we had in the program were really strong in that aspect. So the two combined made a phenomenal group. The women also are very big on, especially in the vegetable value chain, on selling in markets. So as you know, even if you go to a typical African stall across any parts of Africa, you'll see that the women are the ones that sell the fruits and vegetables. And so it was a fitting team that the women would focus on the market initiatives as well as the production initiatives so that you have this market-led. Earlier on, Rob mentioned this market-led approach that AIDI covered. And I must say that the Tanzania example came out very strong in that. We've had cases where some youth groups, for example, are now creating their own spices and herbs to Zanzibar, in the Zanzibar market, which means access to the tourism industry there. We also have in Manyara, it's a specific region in Tanzania where the youth have been allocated greenhouses to produce so they're basically paying a minimum rent or rent-free on these greenhouses that are allocated by the government, but for them to produce herbs and spices. These are two different parts of the country, but you can see the youth is engaging with these market-led approaches. And finally, we have this post-harvest management component. For example, in Arusha, you have a team that is now focused on processing the tomatoes that are often wasted, and they've received direct contracts with key industries. So this market-led approach that we got exposed to during this AIDI initiative calls for more engagement. Once you start focusing on this market-led element, you start improving on the governance. So you have these young institutions or people running these institutions are now a bit more open-minded about formalizing themselves. So they become formal business, which means they can access financing, they can create employment. and a lot more. I'd like to stop for now to allow a chance for others to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Coletta, for sharing that experience also from Tanzania. So we've listened to two partner implementation experiences from Malawi and Tanzania. And now I'm going to come back to you, Rob, because after listening to those, what do you see as the most critical policy and partnership pathways to ensure that the lessons from ADI are sustained and embedded into future agricultural transformation efforts?
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. And I'll be quick because I know Sig's got a lot to say and we have another panel coming. But so one thing that jumps out right at the top is working through partners who are there already and leveraging their capacities and strengths. That was sort of the must have. A second thing that I think was embedded in both the presentations is that the local government was aware and supportive of the work. In other words, it was inclusive and included the local support. One thing that I wanted to add that I'm not sure was covered yet, but I think it's an important lesson, and it came from Malawi, is discerning. A lot of places in ADI, we had specific technologies and practices and packages, but sometimes you need systemic investments. And what was missing, one of the visit to Malawi that I was able to make last year was the bean seed system wasn't working. So ADI actually engaged with companies like Seedco and others and private growers to do something that it was a one-off thing, but it was going to fix a piece of the bean innovation system that wasn't there. So I think being flexible about where we choose to intervene, and then I think part of the success in terms of going forward, we have to capture somehow and justify the less constraining process that we use. We were a lot less rigid, I think, than many kinds of activities. And finally, I would say that the whole ADI enterprise was rooted in solid data, economic analysis, and alignment around shared goals. So there was this core that held us together. And I think if we do all these things right, we can carry this forward, the learning, and we can continue to make it both compelling and effective in terms of impact. But I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. So, Sig, coming to you. ADI, obviously, we aimed to touch lives, and we weren't just only trying to get numbers. However, scaling was a critical part of what we were trying to do to ADI to make sure as many people as possible can benefit from the innovations that we are sharing. So in this experience, Sig, what delivery or scaling models proved to be most effective for ADI? And maybe could you also explain how the ADI project, unlike many others, presented a unique opportunity to integrate development and, to an extent, research? Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think it's so good to see everyone. Many of those in the audience too have been on this project for many, many years, and that it has deep roots. The American people have made many investments that made this possible, and obviously Tanzania, Zambia, and Malawi people. I just want to step back for 1 minute, if I may. This was about an unprecedented challenge, one that sticks with us today. Fertilizer prices are still double, and at one moment they went to 5 times. And in Africa, they're 10 times what they are in much of the global north, right? So fertilizer prices went through the roof. There's some slight increase in some commodities, so that's an opportunity, right, for farmers. But the challenge of drought, we knew El Nino was coming. That put a fire under everyone that I think is there today. So there was the challenge. There was the collaboration, private sector, civil society. You've heard some great examples, and I want to talk about a few more. And then the communication and capacity innovations. So these are some of the themes I want to talk a little bit about. It's about scaling, but in a sustainable way, because everyone brought their best to the table, motivated by helping family farms in Zambia, Malawi, and Tanzania. And we wanted to make sure that we learned along the way so that this would be a sustainable effort. But we also knew that the rains were coming. I remember talking to the team about this, that and Rob mentioned about this seasonality. We got the opportunity, we had to bring everyone together, and everyone really stepped up. So prices were spiking. This was the multiple faceted crisis. And I would remind you that food insecurity is still at unprecedented levels. There's a long downward trend in the world, which I don't know about you, but it helps me sleep at night, that people are going to bed full more often around the world, particularly in Asia, than ever before. But on the other hand, recently there's been an uptick. And to think of children trying to go to school hungry, that is always what's kept me up. And I'm sure you as well. So food insecurity is still a crisis that we need to keep working on. But AID provides us some unique lessons. So this multiple crisis drove partners to work together. There was private sectors we've heard about. There was civil society trying to make sure that it's an inclusive, that we reach some of the last mile, that we sometimes have been left out, right? That market intelligence, as you heard, made sure that it was the right varieties, that it was modern, drought-tolerant pest varieties, resilient varieties, that it was combined with post-harvest technologies, combined with advisories. So I'm going to talk more about that, but it was really about that collaboration of private, public, and civil society that all knew that there were technologies there, but brought them together in really more timely than I've ever seen. And I'm really grateful for everyone's, the international research centers bringing their best research to the table and really trying it and testing it out. So that's where the innovations I want to talk a little bit about. Innovations in technologies and content, but also in communication and finally in capacity building. Again, the lady in the video left us with, she said, we are capacitated, we are the future. And that was so exciting. And then she brought in soils, which I thought was wonderful because, of course, it has to be sustained. Because as you may know, if you look from space, even though farmers are trying to use fertilizers and their governments are supporting them, still maize is and all of the legumes are not as green as they should be because we still have this problem of soil health. So let me just talk a little bit about how we learned as we went, because the monitoring and evaluation and learning to make sure there was capacity built was a really key component of ADI. It was accelerated delivery and it was learning as we went, which I so appreciate everyone's approaches on that, because integrated approaches are often talked about, but not that often really documented to see what works where, and bringing public and private sector again together so that the latest drought-tolerant varieties were also the ones that had the taste that was wanted, that stored well. So it was getting those fit. And that takes what? Agency. It takes local capacity. So let me come to the innovations and communications, because I'm particularly excited about those, because there are many advisories out there, right? Many apps and decision tools, and people are very well meaning in these. But there's been a number of studies showing that if they don't have agency, if they aren't farmer centric, if the last mile doesn't see themselves having an opportunity to query those, and they see them just coming, they may say, oh, they're very nice. Of course, it has nothing to do with me because it's for really rich farmers, but they don't have the agency that they need to have. So we really worked on digital champions as one of the models. You heard about some of the models with gender inclusion in Tanzania. So we tried different approaches, and we found the ones where farmers could call in and then hear other farmers talking and then leave questions. And then they were also supported to use their flip phones to do this. It wasn't just the farmers that had the WhatsApp and have the smartphones, but everyone was capacitated through this approach. We have early results showing that this was the most effective way. Around 300,000 farmers were reached with information about the coming drought, with ability to respond to that crisis. Everything from poultry was invested in to dual purpose crops like pigeon pea. So the combination of integrated approaches, and then they were given post-harvest bags, ways to then save like soybeans yields were quite high in some areas, even during the drought. But then you have to save that so you can sell it at the right time in the market. So it was an integrated approach, but then farmers had the opportunity to learn, not just from extension, because not everyone is near. Unfortunately, many extension agents have 2,000 farm families they have to try and reach, and even more. So this was a way, a model, a pilot to test, and 300,000 were reached. Over 1.5 million were reached with climate advisories, but that was more of a campaign, which is fantastic too and very important. But this interactive approach, the Let's Chat with Digital Champions, is one of the unique learnings that's coming out of AIDI. So it was most of all that we had this crisis, that we came together as a community to address it through unprecedented collaboration, including bringing the latest technologies from international research, working with local universities, with extension campaigns, working with private sector to make sure that they get, and I've always been so touched by meeting some of these small seed companies that, again, there's deep roots. They've been supported through many years through development agencies, through international research. So there they were, some 30 of them, and they wanted to bring their seeds to farmers that had never seen them before, drought-tolerant varieties. And I remember, Rob, you asking me at midnight one time, like, how many can we reach with these drought-tolerant varieties? And I hope that we really did deliver on that, because it was an unprecedented combination of collaboration in response to the crisis and innovations in communication to make sure that no one was left behind. So I hope that we lived up to that challenge and that we are continuing to learn, because these crises are continuing and we need this kind of goodwill and collaboration now more than ever.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sig. So a lot of points have come through, and I think very good discussions going on over here. Any member of the panel, I'm giving you a chance for one last bite. Rob, did you want to add something here before we shift gears to the next segment? Margaret, Coletta?
Yeah, just to wrap up, so the AIDI helped accelerate, as rightly so, it did that job to help accelerate. WorldVeg, as a research and development institution, really focused on the development side without losing the technical aspects of these interventions. And like it was said earlier on, we had the right seeds, the right technology, and we're able to access it through the women and youth that were ready to receive it and ready to learn from it. Yeah, and I hope that will continue in the next phases and beyond. Thank you.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you
and I
very
think
much.
from
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, Margaret, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, so I was saying for us at AFAP and the partners that we're working with, the biggest issue was bringing together the different components, bringing the private sector, the hub agro dealers, for a sustained and strengthened value chain, approach to say, let's have the seed suppliers, and now we're even going to layer on financing institutions, so it can only go onwards and upwards from here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our first set of panelists. We really appreciate those viewpoints and those insights that you've shared. And I think we're going to get an opportunity again to bring you in the discussion session that is coming right after the second segment of this discussion. So at this point, I'd like to invite my colleague, Tehila Chimfwembe, to take us through the second segment. Tehila.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan, for guiding us through such a rich and engaging first segment. You really have set the stage for where this conversation really needs to go. And of course, thank you so much to the panelists for those thoughtful reflections so far. And of course, all the participants who've come in numbers. And we truly are grateful for the contribution that you have been making. Yes, due to limited time, we couldn't invite everybody to speak, but I do know that especially our implementing partners have really spoken on behalf of all the ADI collaborators. My name is Tehila Chimfwembe, as Jonathan introduced. I am the communication specialist under ADI. And in this second segment, we're shifting the lens beyond ADI to really look at sustainability and future pathways. Our focus here is on policy, financing, and the opportunities that really lay ahead for advancing resilient agri-food systems. And we just really want to reflect on some of the lessons from ADI and connect with the bigger picture of agricultural development and what it means for the future. So joining me for this very important discussion are three distinguished panelists, and I am so glad that you honored the invitation to join this discussion. We have Dr. Jerry Glover, who's the Chief of Staff at the International Rice Research Institute, IRRI, and he's formerly... Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So we have Dr. Jerry Glover, who's the Chief of Staff at the International Rice Research Institute, and he formerly served as the Deputy Director at USAID's Bureau for Resilience, Environment and Food Security. And at USAID, he really played a pivotal role in conceptualizing and funding the ADI project, really bringing in a donor lens, policy lens to its design. He is a soil scientist recognized globally for advancing sustainable farming systems. Next, we have Dr. Peter Setimela, who is CIMMYT's country representative in Zambia. He's a chief of party for ADI, aka my boss, who couldn't hear us, who said I wasn't being heard. With over 20 years of experience in seed systems research across Africa, he has led efforts to improve access to quality seeds for smallholder farmers. His expertise bridges technical innovation, policy engagement, and private-public sector collaboration. He really does bring deep insights in seed systems scaling and on-the-ground implementation of this ADI project. And last but not least, we have Dr. Julie March, who is an agricultural ecologist and formerly served as a USAID Agriculture and Food Security Technical Advisor. She has over 2 decades of experience in humanitarian and development in terms of resilient seed systems and food security. Julie has led technical teams across multiple contexts, integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into agricultural programming. So without further ado, I'd like to go into the first question, and I'm posing this to Dr. Peter Setimela. So from your perspective as project lead, what are some of the key achievements by the ADI project?
Good afternoon for this wonderful invitation for this afternoon. I mean, ADI has been a very big project, and also been put together was really a big challenge. I would really like to thank the team and to thank SIG for the leadership of the project. I mean, in this project, ADI, I mean, really what was really important at the beginning was co-creation. I think we have talked and heard from the other colleagues to mention that this the project was part of co-creation. The project was part of social inclusion, looking at gender, looking at youth. And also what was important was bundling of technologies. Most of the time in agriculture, we do technologies as single technologies, but with ADI, we are able to bundle different technologies, seed with fertilizer, seed with inoculum. So that way we knew that farmers don't just focus just on maize or focus on a single commodity, but they look at the different things that are there. So this were really important part of ADI. And also one of the things was the combination of promotion. For example, we looked at digital extension and also a traditional extension, which really played a major role. And one of the things that I think Sig has mentioned was strong monitoring and evaluation. I mean, you can imagine working with so many partners on ADI. How do you monitor that all the partners, they do deliver on the project? So that was really important, to have a very strong team so that we ensure that everybody on the ground, the partners are delivering what they are supposed to deliver. And also one of the most important was the market-led innovations. These innovations, we knew that at the end, the farmer had a market. So based on that, we found that was really the ADI model, looking at all those things: partnership, social inclusion, scalable technologies, strong component on M&E, bundling of technologies. So those were very important component for ADI. And in terms of really looking forward or to sustainability, we find that ADI, what's important is more on the partnership, because we do have private-public partnership. That really plays a major role, that even when ADI is not here anymore, those partners will continue to deliver on the ADI. For example, the seed companies, like for example, as he has alluded, like in Malawi, we had the off-takers of beans, we had the seed companies. Even those seed companies, they are still today continuing to deliver the products that are market driven. They are continuing to deliver those products that are needed in the market. And we know that from the private sector, they are more profit driven. So that drive will continue to drive ADI. And also, when we're selecting the technologies for ADI, we're not just selecting any technologies, but we're selecting those technologies that we knew that they are newer, they have better traits to entice the farmers. There are those traits that are demanded in the market. So those were the things that really drove ADI. And also, it has been alluded that we worked a lot with the government. So most of the technologies that we had were aligned with the government to say these are the government priorities. And before we even went further, we consulted with the Minister of Agriculture, we consulted with Extension to ensure that, we are not in conflict, and that the technologies that we are promoting, they are in line with the government. So those were some of the things that that we have done, and also looking at the numbers that ADI was able to reach. I mean, in the last 3 years of ADI, each year ADI was able to reach over 3 million farmers across Malawi, Tanzania, and Zambia. And one of those things was actually some of the digital technologies that has been alluded in the previous, the number of demonstrations that were there, the number of the different varieties that were there, and the quantity of seed that the partners were able to produce. That quantity of seed was quite high, given where we started. I mean, we did know that from at the beginning, we just had very few number of seed, especially for legumes. For example, today, if you go to Tanzania, you'll find that pigeon pea has really taken off because of the market, because of the varieties that ADI started to promote, and also the number of demonstration that ADI has set out in the field. So that really promoted things like pigeon pea, mung beans, which were some of those crops that were less advantaged before. And also for pigeon pea, looking for markets in Asia, looking for markets anywhere, that really promoted the seed uptake for pigeon pea and also for mung beans. And one of the things with ADI was the flexibility, because when we found that, oh, there's a gap here, we tried to address that gap as we were moving along with ADI. So I'll just say that, really ADI has put a spot, has built up some of those partnership and the seed companies that we hope that they will continue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. For the sake of those who are not familiar with who you are, I just ask that you switch on your camera as well so that we can engage with you all the more. Really moving on to the next question, you really spoke about how ADI embedded sustainability, in its design. But just following up on that, how did the learnings, especially along the way, how did they inform supported innovations beyond the project's life?
Yeah, I mean, with ADI, I mean,
your camera, Peter.
Yeah, somehow I don't know what's happening with my, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm saying that in terms of ADI, the learning, I mean, we had socioeconomists, we have M&E, so we used to meet every now and then to look at what we have learned and learning, and that learning, for example, when we have learned something, we'll go back to the partners and say, this is what is happening. Can we now shift the goals and include these particular activities, since these activities they make sense? For example, in Tanzania, when we're looking at the bean value chain, we found that threshing or small mechanization is important. So we decided to adopt small mechanization, especially for this multi-threshers in Tanzania, to include that on the ADI, because this reduced labor, it created work or employment for the youth. And most of the time, most of our reports will ask the partners to share what they have learned and what they envision could improve the project. And right now, as I speak, we are putting up a document which will embrace or bring together all the lessons that we have learned, so that in case in the future anyone wants to implement ADA, we will have those lessons to take forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you just perfectly brought in the aspect of the lessons that have been learned. And from this, I'd really like to jump to Julie. Julie, from a monitoring, evaluation, and learning perspective, what lessons, like Peter has highlighted, what specific lessons would you prioritize to help scale large and complex programs such as ADI?
Thanks so much. That's a great question. I'd like to expand it a bit beyond monitoring and evaluation because I think we've taken so much away from this model. I had the absolute pleasure to also work on the ADI program in Mozambique and an aligned model in Sudan. So this is across all of these. I think the beauty of ADI is that it truly has the power to be transformational, but that as implementers and as donors, we need to be in the right frame of mind, right? And so you mentioned M&E, and I'll start with that. I think really identifying what spells success and making sure that we can reflect that through the indicators that are selected. And again, I mentioned that the ADI model has the potential to be transformational. I don't think we always capture that with our indicators that we select, right? I mean, we can't identify just ground shaking change through number of seeds distributed. And so I think really thinking beyond that, getting some coherence, someone mentioned the co-creation process earlier. So getting some coherence around what success looks like at a broader systems level for all of the actors. So really having deep involvement from our local actors, from our local partners, our last mile partners, the full range of the partnership. So I think understanding what that looks like. And then I think working towards that, but also accepting the fact that these goals are multi-year goals. And so it's possible that in a 2 to 3 year program, we're not going to make it all the way there, right? Complete system sustainability for agriculture, food, and seed systems. That's probably more than a 2-year objective. So I think really setting short-term interim goals, being able to tell the story about the transformation that's happening is critically important. And I think not being afraid to start with the basics. And so Sig mentioned access to extension, right? I think we can have the most fantastic innovations on the shelves, but if we're not really getting a sense from the farmers on the ground what they want, what they need, and what the hurdles are to sustainably introducing that in a market-based way, we're not going to make the types of progress that we really need to get that lasting change. And so I think also the beauty of ADI is that in several cases, it's working in areas that also have traditionally received short-term emergency or humanitarian response. So beginning to think about a shift of mindset, not just on the MEL program, but also for the partners. We're saying to them, especially our local, more humanitarian or emergency focused partners, a common complaint for decades has been the short-term duration of that type of funding. So now we're saying with 3 years, what would you do differently? And what kinds of partnership networks can you link together to make that happen? And so I think in many ways, there's a required shift of mindset, both for research partners and for our more locally based partners. And it might also be some building of capacity. I think this model relies heavily on specific context, understanding that context, understanding the hurdles, both from an agricultural perspective, but from a success perspective and a marker of success. I remember very well being in DRC for the 3rd year in a row, out with the same implementing partner in the same farmers' fields, and thinking, wow, we are not serving people well with this model. And so really being able to lead with agriculture as kind of, I don't like this phrase, but the tip of the spear for enhancing food security long term is an incredibly useful tool, right? So setting the groundwork for transformational system change led by agriculture in areas that maybe have had humanitarian assistance, it's a mindset shift for sure. And I think I think we have excellent data about the kind of the shortcomings of repeated seasons of short-term assistance, especially related to agriculture. And I think we can look at cases in Ethiopia, DRC, where there are 20 years of consecutive donations of seed, which really doesn't lead to a lasting, sustainable systems approach. On the donor side, this all sounds great, but there's a lot of hurdles as well to embracing this model fully. And I think this goes back a bit to the Mel question that you did ask. What's the appetite for risk, both for implementers and for donors? I think there's an opportunity for failure here. And so there has to be some premium put just on the experience and the progress made along the way. Maybe it's not reaching the end point. I think there's obviously, when you're working with a larger constellation of partners, there's different missions, different mandates, and different measures of success. So trying to come to some concurrence on what that looks like and what's demand driven for the farmers. I think there are tremendous opportunities, though, as well. There's an opportunity for more nimble programs that can pivot as needed. But again, we need to nudge our donors to embrace that as well. I think anyone that's worked with USAID knows that just changing a geographic location can take several months and tons of paperwork. And then I think really embracing this idea that there's a network of partners that may be outside of the norm for the partners that we would be working with. But this in turn really enhances, I think, the sustainability of that approach. So I went far beyond your Mel question, but I think this model is something that is a tremendous overlay for thinking about food security, seed security, and agricultural systems, but that in every instance, it's got to be tweaked to reflect the local context, local partners, and farmer demand. Maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Julie. In social innovation, we talk about grand challenges, and some of these grand challenges range from poverty, inequality, and especially in this case, food insecurity, where time does not change anything, especially things in a short space of time, but we kind of feed into impact and trying to make impact where we can. But unfortunately, we can't 100% alleviate food insecurity in 3 years. So really I like how you also highlighted the requirement of shifts in mindset, not just with on the supply side, but on the demand side as well. And even Margaret brought out how people who were not susceptible to cowpeas earlier have then started transforming their mindset towards that. Peter also mentioned the same with pigeon peas in Tanzania. So just really borrowing from what you have said, I'd like to jump to Jerry. Again, looking at the long arc of agricultural development from the Green Revolution to today's climate crisis, and we really experienced quite a lot of it, especially in Zambia and Malawi with El Nino. What are some of the other paradigm shifts that still need to be made to make agricultural innovation rather more inclusive, more resilient, and truly sustainable?
Well, thanks a lot. And that is a hard question. I have a doubly hard duty following the very eloquent and wonderful people who spoke before me. And I certainly want to take just a minute or so to thank CIMMYT overall and the CGAR beyond CIMMYT for their great responsiveness in this program. I know Peter and Christian in those early months, working with SIG on the conceptual side. I know Peter and Christian were out in the field trying to get research, or not research, but delivery plots up and running over the holidays. So that spirit just was really inspiring and continues to be so. So thank you all very much for that. Your question is really big, Tahila. So I'm going to maybe bring it down. Julie took your question and expanded it up. I might narrow it down a little bit to take a circuitous route to answering it over the longer period of the 7 minutes that I have. Let me start out by saying I've been asked several times over the past couple of months, like, what was the idea? What were the basic ideas, concepts, and approaches behind 8i? What was it all about? It's really hard to sum it up, but I've been, I think, improving my attempt at doing that. And it's fairly simple, and several people have pointed this out, but really connecting those upstream innovation developers, such as the CGIAR, the various universities, the folks developing that and filling that pipeline of innovation, connecting them through intermediaries, the government officials, the private sector, the civil society, down to the last mile beneficiaries in the rural communities. And that's a tough pathway to follow through completely. But I think that was one of the big successes of 8i. Three things really helped achieve that. Now, there are other things besides these three that others have talked about. So I'm trying to not be repetitive and introduce some new concepts here. But one was the requirements that we imposed on the focusing and the targeting. So we got folks around a table and said, propose to us what you can do to accelerate, expand, or deepen the impact that you're already having in your existing programs. So that covers a couple of different things. You're not starting up something new and separate. You're doing what you're already doing, but you're gonna identify what we can do to help you do it better. So who's the we? Well, that gets into the second thing, the connections. So first is the requirements. The second is the connections. And others have spoken about this, putting together around a table the innovators, the CGIAR, universities, and so on, around a table with government officials that know the policy landscape, know the political constraints, the political economy, as we say, civil society, the NGOs living and working in the communities, the private sector that need to make this work over the long term financially. That's the market-driven perspective. Now, notice I don't say farmers. We didn't have farmers around the table. That's nearly impossible. You can't get enough farmers around a table to be representative. So we were really relying on those stakeholders around the table to represent the communities that they live and work in and serve. That's a critical part. We all talk about demand driven, but really in retrospect, we were asking the intermediaries, what can we do to help you better serve your beneficiaries? We weren't directly asking the farmers, what do you need? That's very important because farmers often are far enough removed from the innovations that they may not know what's just over the horizon. Whereas the intermediaries often can see, we need this new seed variety, this new crop variety, or we need this new machine that we saw advertised somewhere else. So that was an important thing, I think, the connections. So let me just review. The requirements for being a participant, the connections between those. And by that, I mean, we also demanded that the participants show how they can mutually reinforce and strengthen each other. So it wasn't just what they could do individually, but what could they do as a group. And so the requirement was, amongst these connections, private sector working with civil society and government officials. Then the third, and this is one thing I struggled mightily with. What's the funding model? And initially I said, well, we're funding the CGIAR, in this case CIMMYT. We also had a similar rapid delivery hub in Central Africa. But is the CGIAR the best partner to oversee this? And initially I thought no, but we're in an emergency. We're going to go with who we can and who we think can get the job done in this context. But ultimately, so who are your other options? Well, contractors, civil society partners that compete for these kinds of contracts in a traditional sense. And here, what we saw is CGIAR playing a fairly neutral role, because we required that most of the money did not go to end up with the CGIAR centers. CIMMYT, for example, 70 or more % went out to the partners carrying out the actual work. So what's in it? What was in it for the CG centers, CIMMYT in this case? Well, one was their passion and obviously their professional interests that Peter and Christian and others displayed. But institutionally, it delivers. It's proof in the pudding that the innovations they're developing can be scaled and can have impact on the ground. And this is the conduit for them to do that. That ultimately gets them more funding for innovation development. So this was a great opportunity to show how the innovation developers can play a more neutral, objective role in organizing this system, this what we called the network of networks going out to the last mile. So ultimately, I think the funding model was, there may be some flaws with having an innovation developer being the sort of manager of a last mile delivery program, but it's probably better than any other thing that I could think of, even given time and less urgency. So I think ultimately that funding model served us extremely well because of the flexibility of the CGIAR system, the responsive of specific centers, and then just the great spirit of the folks in it. Of course, I'm saying this now as one that's in it. So, but actually tonight, this afternoon, I'm speaking from my USAID role. So I am conceptually keeping them separate right now. But that funding model was absolutely essential to getting this rolling, not just in a crisis, I think, but in being an objective broker, putting together the various partners, because what we saw putting the people, the different stakeholders around the table, is that each one had their strengths and each one had points on their agenda that they were promoting. But you get these different representatives together and you hear, each one putting forth 3 or 4 priorities, but then there's one at the top that they all agree on. That's where you can identify the breakthrough point. We all need this. All of our beneficiaries need this one thing. And that's where you get away from the sort of peddling of each group's, main focus. That's where you got real synergy around that table. And I saw it, in action. One partner would say, well, we really like chickens. Another one would say, we really like legumes. But when they all get together and say, for the communities that we're working in, what we need are vegetables. And that's what our beneficiaries need. That's how we could really propel it forward. That's just one example. But that's how that synergy comes together. And you need a kind of an objective broker to figure out how you're going to fund that through these proposals that were put together, that were required to be mutually reinforcing for the partners involved. And it was a model that fostered collaboration rather than competition, which is the traditional model. That's probably beyond my 7 minutes, but yeah. Thank you for the question. Oh, but that probably doesn't get to your development question directly, but let me just add 30 seconds to try and answer that. So the paradigm shift is, there's a lot of great development activities that have happened through competition, many different stakeholders competing for a pot of money. But ultimately, to tie it all together, to bring it together, we need a model internationally, not just at a country level, but internationally. How do we bring this together for collaboration, true collaboration, and strengthening the ongoing programs, not creating new stuff? But anyway, so leveraging the ongoing sort of competitive development activities to put them together. So that's maybe the paradigm shift. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you talked about the table where innovators, civil society, government officials, and private partners come together to foster, like you said just now, true collaboration and strengthen ongoing programs, and not trying to always just come up with something new, but to really leverage off of different innovators that have come together. Just even from how you're saying it, I don't know if I understood it right, but even with regards to like the ADI model, right? Now looking at it on this level, I believe ADI served as a facilitator in as much as we had these innovations that we needed to take, and the implementing partners really served as the intermediaries who then took these various innovations to the last mile, to transform lives, to change lives. When we saw in the video of Jennifer Sanga, where she did not just learn from her father, who was a lead farmer under FOF, she became a lead farmer. And through FOF, she was able then to take herself to school as well. So this is the impact that we sort of talk about. And even with how Margaret talked about how with AFAP being an intermediary, and in this case, an implementing partner, they were able to bring to the table the realization that these innovations were there, but the farmers were not aware of such innovations, and they needed to sell the story of these innovations and pretty much convince the farmers about their benefits. So I think that's how it just holistically works. So just
may I add just a little
yes,
bit?
please.
And sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
No worries.
But okay, so just a little bit to add on that. One of the most frequently asked questions after we had these stakeholder meetings, where we were getting people around the table, came from the innovation providers. They would come up to me and say, Jerry, why aren't you funding the promotion of innovation A? And I'd say, well, seems like a good innovation, but that's not what was asked for. There were a lot of things that could have been promoted, but that getting around the table to identify what was needed in the top 3 or 4 things, because really you can flood all the development community with 600 innovations. We see mention of clearinghouses with literally thousands of innovations on but what we need maybe is a clearinghouse of demands rather than a clearinghouse of supplies. We need an organized clearinghouse of demands for specific communities that the innovation folks, bless their hearts, they're developing great innovations, and you need a wide array available to meet unknown surprises and challenges. But to get the last mile delivery there, we need to know more about what's needed from the people living and working in the communities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as a follow-on to that, in 2 minutes, as we cast our focus into the future, Jerry, what are the opportunities or other opportunities in this case do you see for blending donor, private sector, and national system to advance resilient agri-food systems?
Well, I mean, I think a great example that's happening now in Africa is around soil health and fertilizer action plans. So you have the African Union working with national partners, governments, and the private sector. The fertilizer suppliers, AFAP is right in there. Many others, all the way down to civil society, developing ways, all the way from the science and technology, the digital development, down to inclusive supply chains to work through this, to help ensure that the future price spikes that sparked the development of 8i are less severe in the future. What a great example, that coming together of and leadership from the African Union and other national partners working with the development community. USAID was heavily involved in the development of that, along with the Gates Foundation, many European partners, but also national governments putting in money of their own. So I think that's a great example. Very inspiring to see that. Maybe too soon to tell its full success, but I have high hopes. And the CGIAR, by the way, is fully involved in that effort as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerry. And I'd like to also just extend my gratitude to Peter as well as Julie. You've really given us a lot to think about, especially with regards to sustainability, scaling, and as well as how future partnerships can really shape the next chapter, even beyond 8i. At this point, I'd like to hand back to Jonathan as he continues to guide us through the final stretch. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Taylor. Thank you, that panel team. Quite good discussions. Yeah, if it were up to me, I would say that let's not stop. But at this point, we'd like to maybe get a bit of interaction as well with the participants joining this webinar from various locations. I can see a question on the chat and on the Q&A platform, and I see also a hand up. So let me I think Peter, I will ask you to respond to this question from Vicky. And the question is, how does 8i and partners address the issue of seed quality control with the engaged seed vendors? How did we handle that? And then as Peter is responding to that, I'd like to request, I can see my namesake, Jonathan Atkinson, with a raised hand. So I'd request Thais and the team to give Jonathan that opportunity to also be able to unmute and speak. So yeah, Peter, over to you first, and then we go to Jonathan.
Okay, thank you for that question. I'll just probably put some of the lessons that we have learned from 8i. In terms of 8i, in terms of seed quality, what we did was to work with partners to provide training. For example, when we started 8i, we said, okay, these are the quality, the seed quality that is demanded by farmers, by partners. So we went through the whole value chain on how to ensure that you produce quality seed. And also, given legumes seed, we went further to say, well, within ADI, we can have quality declared seed. This quality declared seed, that means you need less monitoring to produce quality seed than if you move into certified seed. So we did partner with the seed services in Malawi, seed services in Tanzania and in Zambia, so that they do some of the seed inspections in the field where we had community-based seed production. And at the same time, we did work with other partners. For example, in Malawi, we had the scratch card, where if a farmer buys seed, then the farmer will be able to scratch, put that number on the mobile phone. And if that was genuine seed, then the farmer will get a message to say this is genuine seed. But if the seed was not genuine or it was fake seed, then it'll also tell you that this seed lot does not exist. So there were many other ways that we worked around that with some of the partners to ensure that quality seed is delivered to the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Atkinson, are you able to unmute and speak now? Maybe, I don't know whether the CIMMYT I can actually see 2 hands up and also Hambulo. Thais, are you there? Thais?
Yes, he can speak now.
Okay. Also, I can see you've given Hambulo, also give Dr. Atkinson. Okay. All right, so let's have Atkinson first, Dr. Atkinson, and then we'll have Hambulo next, yeah.
There, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
You want to turn on your camera, that would be great as well.
Okay, I'll apologize. I'm in a hotel room. Let's see. I don't see a camera option here.
All right. Maybe just go ahead, no problem.
Okay, for the sake of time, I just want to echo again what's been said, that I think the impact of AID. Sorry, let me first introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Atkinson. I'm one of the early implementers of AID from its inception, and I represent Marden, which is a leading phosphate producer, and our local interest in the region under Meridian was quite a big champion of AID on the fertilizer side and the agricultural extension side. And again, I want to echo that the impact that AID has left in the region is undoubtedly going to be generational. And I'm not saying that to be provocative. I'm saying that to be real. It's a real positive outcome. I want to just be cautious though on the innovation. I think we did miss an opportunity. Jerry mentioned, and I know Jerry for a long time, and he mentioned the innovators in these types of collaborations being the CGs. But I want to echo that the private sector itself considers himself to be innovators. And again, we need to appreciate that the innovation that comes from the private sector is often generated out of a need, out of a commercial need. And if I look at AID, if I think back to October the 15th, 2022, when we were in Zambia, Jerry mentioned that AID could potentially make a massive impact coming off the back of the Russia fertilizer crisis. And so the primary focus at that stage was looking at fertilization as well as seed systems, but also getting the pricing right and the innovation right around fertilizer and crop nutrition. Let's move away from fertilizer because it's a bit polarizing. Let's talk about crop nutrition. And I think one of the biggest, for me, missed opportunities buying a partner like Marden and Meridian and any other partner on board is the innovation that could have come out of AID on making fertilizers more efficient, not only more affordable, but more efficient, more effective, and effectively, partnering at the coalface of that innovation. That innovation is not vested with CGs because CGs don't have blending plants or granulation plants or access to raw materials. And I think that must be appreciated going forward, guys, Jerry and the team. When you have the opportunity to deal with private sector partners that are actually at the raw material stage of the process flow, you have to jump at that with both hands, because then you can actually invest in that innovation. And in retrospect, sorry. In retrospect, if you look at what Jerry mentioned now, Jerry, what you've mentioned now about where things are going with the EU and with Outer NEPAD, about different declarations. Just imagine if we had capitalized on pushing more into the sort of fertilizer space of things, how it would have created a segue into going into a new phase with the governments. And so it's a very important lesson to learn, that as the private sector, we're not only there to fill a gap in terms of filling a seat at the table. We absolutely are at the innovation. In fact, my sitting right now in Abu Dhabi is about how do we actually get enhanced fertilizers into the hands of smallholder farmers, and how do we get better quality fertilizer at better pricing into the hands of smallholder farmers. So I think you guys need to recognize that at that strategic, bring a partner to the table, we need to back ourselves, and we need to say that innovation sits with the private sector as well. Let's capitalize on their R&D and let's put that to the best use. Okay. But other than that, the project for us was a massive success. I can with the support of Peter, who's been amazing, and SIG, I can confirm that we have no less than 4 innovations that's been commercialized out of this project that will be in the mainstream. So for us, we don't always need the limelight to showcase what we've done. We put it into practice and we commercialize it, and we see the benefit in the end user. So for us, it's been a success. Thanks a lot, guys. Well done.
And may I jump in? Huge thank you to Jonathan for his great engagement. Real big figure in the success of 8i, and absolutely right in saying that
we can't hear you, Jerry.
What's that?
We couldn't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying thank you, Jonathan. He is a great partner and a huge part of the success of 8i. And completely right about the private sector being innovators as well as delivery partners, just like some of the innovators like CGIAR were also very important in the delivery. So those lines we found out very quickly were not clear cut. There were few organizations that were strictly innovators or strictly delivery partners. But again, Jonathan, spot on, and blessings be upon thee for your efforts in 8i and elsewhere and beyond. So great to hear your voice on here tonight or today. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic interventions. Ambulo, also.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, you're clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Good to see the team, Jerry, Julie, Rob, and everyone else. I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the conversation. I think one of the key unique features of ADI was that we had a very flexible learning agenda. Remember how, Jerry, when ADI started, you'd always say it's like building a plane and flying it at the same time. So we learned as we go. And I want to give just one example of how that learning actually happened and informed our programming. So for armworms are a big threat to maize production in the region. The CGR, CIMMYT and IIT and others worked to develop maize varieties that are tolerant to armworm. Through ADI and working with private sector partners, like Jonathan and seed companies in particular, ADI made some catalytic investments to fast track the commercialization of those seeds. But before that happened, As soon as we knew these varieties were available and released in Zambia and Malawi, ADI went ahead to do some demand assessments to test the market. What's the potential demand for these varieties? Based off of that assessment, went back to private seed companies to inform them of the potential demand. And right now, as we speak in Zambia, we have 2 private sector companies that have invested in commercializing 4 plant maize varieties. And from this coming season, those varieties will be available on the market for farmers to actually purchase. So having that flexibility, both in the program implementation side of things and also in the learning, was very also instrumental to the success of ADI. We're actually now, as Peter mentioned, working on a book that brings together the lessons that have emerged from ADI so that these can be kept and used for future programming. I think I'll stop here, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambulo, for that addition and that example. So yeah, it's been very good, engaging discussion, and we are really getting to the tail end of this. So at this point, I'm gonna invite Sig to offer us some closing remarks on behalf of the CIMMYT management team. Sig, over to you.
I just want to say thank you. People stepped up in a crisis and have been learning together, which is the important thing, to keep your eyes on the prize. And so we are very grateful for the American people that made this investment in Southern Africa, where many of us have a part of our hearts. And we appreciate how private sector, a shout out to Jonathan, if you're still on, that you know that you made a particular investment of your time, and also when we needed it, we're super efficient so that everyone pulling together could realign some of the funds, and yet you still delivered in such a way. So you, to me, are the spirit of the private sector that was really the backbone of this accelerated delivery. And everyone here that's just one example of the type of sacrifice, the type of commitment that we've seen. And I just want to say that I am so proud of all of you for stepping up when I met farmers in the fields who are really trying to cope with generational drought, or trying to cope with prices like they've never seen before. And they're really at the end of a very long value chain. They're now more integrated because of the private sector's efforts, and because public sector was there making the long-term investments for these farmers who really have to try and feed their families and find income opportunities so that they can go to school based on really challenging resources, and yet they do it. And it's because of all of you that they have been able to be buffered a little bit in this really rapidly changing time. So thank you for all that you've done, and all know that you made a difference. So let's keep going. La lucha continua, the struggle continues, and with this community, we can get there. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Sig. So everybody, today we've celebrated ADI's legacy, examined lessons for delivery and scaling, and we've also looked ahead on how to sustain what has been achieved. The recurring theme, of course, is innovation delivery is not just a project. It's a movement requiring collaboration, inclusion, and continuous adaptation. I think this summarizes what we've been able to achieve in ADI and how we've learned as we go along. So thank you once again, everybody. For those of us who had to wake up very early in the morning, thank you for cutting short maybe your sleep. And for those late in the evening, have a nice evening. We hope to keep these conversations going. And you will hear from us in case other new discussions are coming up. Thank you very much, and everybody have yourselves a nice day, nice evening, and bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.